Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson. Stay tuned for the next hour as Sue explores the human psyche, what makes us tick, and how to live better, more fulfilled and more meaningful lives. Only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson and I'm on my program, Finding Human. It's so nice to be with you. Thank you so much for all of you who stopped me or sent messages, stopped me at the shops to say that you'd really enjoyed my program last week with Leanne Grimberg. And I enjoyed her too. Today I'm on my own, I'm my own guest. And before I start, I would like to thank Craig, Vusi and Makundi for always keeping me on air. If you'd like to join in my conversation today, please do so on 061 895 1019. As usual, when I'm on my own, I always choose YouTubes or short audio clips, should I say, to explain what I'm talking about or just to add a different dimension. Today's program I've actually called There Will Be Days Like These. And it is from the poem which you can all read about, which I think is it's really worth it. I'll read a bit of it a bit later. But, Deuteronomy says, "Today I've given you the choice between life and death, between blessings and curses. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, that you would choose life so that you and your descendants might live." I felt that this was incredibly relevant today. This quote from the Torah and in Deuteronomy: "Our hostages have chosen life over fear. They're holding their heads up in the most appalling situations, and they are endeavoring to get on with their lives and sharing some of their stories." I have been asked often why Israel do not share more of the horrors that our hostages have endured. And the fact is that we are a very private people. And no, we are not going to share anything that you feel might fill other people's needs or curiosity. We're already going to a bit of a ad break.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
You're going to be listening to a very short audio clip now, and I need to thank Carol Zimmerman for sending it to me.
I'm getting ready to go to bed, but I wanted to read this poem by Laura Ding Edwards called The Mountain, and I have to actually read it, so bear with me. If the mountain feels too big today, then climb a hill instead. If the morning brings you sadness, it's okay to stay in bed. If the day ahead weighs heavy and your plans feel like a curse, there's no shame in rearranging. Don't make yourself feel worse. If the shower stings like needles and the bath feels like you've drowned, if you haven't washed your hair in days, don't throw away your crown. The day is not a lifetime. A rest is not defeat. Don't think of it as failure, just a quiet, kind retreat. It's okay to take a moment from an anxious, fractured mind. The world will not stop turning while you get it realigned. The mountain will still be there when you want to try again. You can climb it in your own time. Just love yourself till then.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with you. If you'd like to WhatsApp me, please do so on 061 895 1019. I was talking about my topic, which is There Will Be Days Like These. And Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs said, we have to resolve the tension in ourselves before we can do so for others. We have to be at peace with ourselves before we can be at peace with the world. And I thought this was particularly interesting because at the moment we're all being tested. We're being tested to be the best version of ourselves. what are we going to bring forward into our lives, into our future? Or are we simply humans just sitting back and waiting for the world to take charge of us? We all have our own doubts, our fears, our challenges, and our hopes. And there will be days of challenges and hurt and betrayal, but there will also be days of joy and laughter. And I wanted to bring in friendship here, because I think friendship is so often underrated in a time of a life we are going through at the moment, which is, as I was going to say Viktor Frankl, but as Lord Jonathan Sacks says, a fractured world. That's what we are in at the moment. And this last weekend, we were at a game farm, and I spent a lot of time on my own while the others were out on game drives. And I got to thinking about friendships. Some friendships are related to us. Our husband, if we're lucky and he's a friend, mine is. Our cousins, our in-laws. Others have entered our lives and stayed. And some are near and some are far. But wherever you are, I do bless the people who have been in my life. I have many friends. No, well, when I say many friends, I have special friends of different genders. And some, I might add, are about to change from one decade to another. There was that incredible poem about a train, and it was about the different the stations that you stop at and how people get on and get off at different stations. Some stay until for the whole ride. Others come for a very short time and then step off. And as each station, other passengers might climb aboard. And this is about friendship and relationships. Some relationships last a lifetime. Others enter and do leave when they are meant to leave. In Proverbs it says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. And then it also says, do not make friends with a hot-tempered person. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn their ways and get yourself ensnared. The righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. This, to me, is incredibly important, what it says there, how we choose our friends, because they can pull us down or they can lift us up. And, I was thinking of two particular friends of mine, Minnie and Linda, who both picked up the pieces of their lives and have moved to other countries. Minnie just this last weekend and Linda last year. And they are people that are just so, apart from relating to them, I'm just so incredibly proud of them, because they have had the courage to change to what they actually wanted in their lives. Now, each of our friendships bring a different dimension to our lives, and certainly to my life. And a friend is someone who encourages you to succeed, but is also there to pick up the pieces when you yourself need a bit of a hand in it. Some of my friends have been with me for a long time, and others not such a long time. But the amazing thing is, what I love is what people share. And so often they share what I'm needing for the day. It might be a sunset, a photo of a sunset, a sunrise, which are put on my fridge. And Les, you know who I'm talking about. It might be a quote or a joke. Many of you know that I love quotes. It might be a poem or a song or a photo of grandchildren playing on ski slopes or skiing or skateboarding. I love them. I love to share these times with my friends, and my friends who are my cousins who are my friends. And I got to thinking about in 1968, my friend Jenny may actually tell me it's not the right year, but in those days, of course, we did not have cell phones, and certainly neither of us could afford long distance phone calls. And Jenny was already living in London, and we had arranged to meet on a set day uh, under the statue of Eros. But it wasn't just under the statue of Eros. We were not allowed to just stand anyway. If you go onto Google and you Google the statue of Eros, you'll see that Eros is holding a bow and arrow. So Jenny told me that I had to meet her exactly where the arrow was pointing, that side of Eros. And sure enough, we had to rely on letters and memory. I don't know if I could do that today, but we did. We met there. It was a wonderful meeting of friendship, which has gone on through all these years. With so many friends, we do share happy and sad memories. Laughter, fun, good times and bad times, and they're not always good times and bad times. And I love my younger friends who share their lives and tell me what they are going through, what they are enjoying or what they aren't enjoying. And I'll get back to that shortly.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
You're going to be listening to an audio clip now by a woman called Anat Ron Kendall. I found this incredibly interesting. Her father was killed on the 7th of October, and she was there as well, and of course subject to a lot of cruelty. And yet she said something so interesting, that not all Palestinians are evil. And I thought of something that George Orwell said. It's not so much staying alive, it's staying human that's important. What counts is that we don't betray each other. Thank you, Craig.
Speaking to so many people here because they're all united with one voice that they want the hostage to be brought home now. With me I have Annette Ron Kendall, who's from, it's kind of a very long story short. Your father was killed on October the 7th, 2023. Your family's been so badly affected. The kibbutz, where you're from, hit again. You've got pictures of two hostages that you particularly want to see come back, but it's a question of really bringing everybody back, isn't it? That's what you want to see.
Yeah. We're just we hold two or more than two feelings. We're happy for the families that have been reunited today. We know from first experience. We value life. We want to see everybody safe. We're concerned for their well-being. And the grief, the worry and the happiness all mixed together, and for the people of Gaza as well, coming back to some sort of normality. So all together mixed.
It's interesting you said the people of Gaza. You make a distinction between Hamas and Palestinians.
Yeah, Hamas, the people that murdered my father on the October the 7th and terrorized myself because I was there and I survived, they're not the Palestinians, the majority at least. So not to get into politics, we do make a distinction, but for today, because we've lived an experience, we don't want to talk politics. We want to talk about how we are just trying to hold the collective hope for the well-being of the people that are still there, and the grieving families that have lost people on the day, like my own family, losing my father.
We've got images here of Omri. Turn that to the camera. We've got Jachi as well. It's so vital to you that these people come back. But when you hear of the possibility of the army, say, setting up in Gaza, in West Bank in some way, that might, for some people, be seen as perhaps blocking the deal going forward. Issues like that, or maybe something that Hamas is doing. How do you cope yourselves as an organisation and as people and as individuals when that happens, when maybe sort of something that's going to be sort of down the line, which might derail the deal. How does that make you feel? It must be very hard to cope with.
We live with constant, minute-by-minute existential issues that our way of having a resilience, and we hold each other, we support each other, we understand what us as a community, as a collective, have been through.
You were saying to me earlier about the importance of life.
Yeah, we value life, every life. It will be reflected in the deal for each hostage. There's many prisoners who've got blood on their, even possibly the people who have murdered my own father. But still, if I had to choose, and I know my father would be the same, would feel the same, is the people that are still alive, they need to be brought back to be reunited with their loved ones. That's the most important. Sorry, I've got...
And I know it's really hard, but can I just be clear? You be okay with the person who killed your father maybe going free if it meant peace for everybody?
If it meant that my Tzachis can be reunited with his children. I saw his children possibly 1 hour after he was taken, after his daughter, 18-year-old daughter, was murdered in his hands. I saw them. I was reunited with them while we were brought to safety by the IDF soldiers. And so I know what it would mean to them to have him safe in their hands. I value that more than holding the person who actually killed my father.
Anat, thank you very much for sharing these very difficult thoughts with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you for telling us about your friends, about the loss of your father, and our deepest sympathies with you and indeed with everybody affected by this situation, which isn't being resolved quickly, but we hope moving towards some kind of resolution for the best outcome for both sides.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with you, and you've just been listening to a very short audio clip, and the lady that was being interviewed is called Anat Ron Kendall, and she was being interviewed by France 24's Mark Owen, and she was actually in Hostage Square at the time. And I found this particular YouTube to be incredibly moving. You could see what she was feeling. She cried at one stage. She had to catch her breath. So there was just such a wide range of emotions that she was feeling. And she makes a very big distinction between the people of Gaza, from the Hamas militants who took control of Gaza nearly 2 decades ago when Israel moved out. And she says that she values every life. And she said, if you think about it, each hostage, there are going to be 34 freed hostages for 900 terrorists. Where is the justice in that, I ask you? And yet here is a woman who saw her father being killed and still is prepared to think about reconciliation and being very happy for the hostages who are being freed and being brought back to her family, to their families. She said there's grief, worry, and happiness all mixed up together. And I thought, what a lesson that she has given us, especially when what we saw this last, not actually this last, was a little bit better, the last few hostages who were released because Netanyahu did step in and say it was not going to be allowed. That absolute show that Hamas put on as they were releasing our hostages, making them walk in false uniforms, I might add, those those young Israeli women soldiers in false uniforms. Those were certainly not IDF uniforms, but they were being made to walk onto the stage, to wave, to smile. And people have asked, how could they do that? Well, if you've been held hostage for so many months upon months, you've been abused, you've been told that you're being freed and then not freed, what would you do? You would listen to what your tormentors are saying, do what they wanted you to do, which was to smile, to wave. They did that. And I say, wow, what unbelievable courage you showed, all of you, the men, the older men, the younger men, the women, how courageous you all were to get onto that stage, to hold yourselves, your heads up high, to smile, to wave, to get into the Red Cross vehicles while the Red Cross was standing there doing nothing at all to help you. This transition from captivity to freedom, they did nothing whatsoever to help you to move through those crowds of unruly, terrifying people, masked, wearing uniforms of Hamas. How terrifying for all of you. And yet you kept your heads up. You got into the Red Cross cars, which had not even had their windows blackened or blocked out, which would have given you a sense of at least a little bit of safety, one from those crowds that were going disgustingly crazy. I want to tell you something that Natanya Sharansky's daughter wrote. She said, once during a difficult time, I complained to my father, Natan Sharansky, that I was miserable. And he said, let me tell you what helped me in the Gulag. That sentence alone reminded me how easy my life was. But what he said next changed my perspective forever, especially now as we hear the harrowing stories of our hostages. This is what her father said, Natan Sharansky said. The KGB tries to break you by making you feel powerless. In prison, you control almost nothing. But I knew that if I surrendered my sense of agency, I would be vulnerable to their pressures. So every day I asked, what are my ultimate goals? And what can I do right now to serve them? My goal was not to break. So even the smallest actions, exercising, refusing to talk to an agent, fasting, gave me control. I was still serving my own goals, not theirs. It goes on to say, when hostages like Agam kept Shabbat, when Liri defended Amit, when Maya recited Psalms, when Gadi clung to the hope of rebuilding near Oz, they achieved the impossible. They took control of their own lives. Though terrorists controlled their bodies, these heroes refused to surrender their souls. This past week, we read Parsha Bo, where the Israelites slaughter Egypt's sacred goats, publicly rejecting their oppressor's power. Our hostages did the same. May we learn from their courage. May they find healing, and may we all emerge from this darkness into light. That is victory, and that choice is in our hands. This was from Rachel Sharansky Danziger, Natan Sharansky's daughter. And she says it all there. I could never have put it better than that. And once again, we talk about the train of life and just picking up different things on Google, hearing different stories, having people send me messages or YouTubes or something that they feel I might enjoy or I might use on my program. Thank you all. I do use what you send me so often, and I really appreciate it. I honestly do. the train of life. By the way, if you want to look it up on Safari or Google, it's by James Tippett, and it said at birth we board the train and we meet our parents, and we believe they will always travel by our side. But as time goes by, other people will board the train and they will be significant. For instance, our siblings, our friends, our children, and the love of our life. However, at some station, our parents will step down from the train, leaving us on this journey to travel alone. But others will step down over time and leave a permanent vacuum. And that permanent vacuum, I was thinking about when you heard Anat talking about her father having been killed by the terrorists, that permanent vacuum that will be in her life. But she's chosen to do something with it, to stand by the hostages in Hostage Square and go on demanding their release. Some people will go unnoticed, that we don't even realize that they've vacated their seat because they haven't really impressed on our lives. I've added on my own. But this train ride will be full of joy, of sorrow, of fantasy, of expectations, of hellos, goodbyes, and farewells. The success consists of having a good relationship with all passengers, requiring that we give the best of ourselves. The mystery to everyone is we do not know at which station we ourselves will step down. So we must always live in the best way, love, forgive, and offer the best of who we are. It is important to do this because when the time comes for us to step down and leave our seat empty, we should leave behind beautiful memories for those who will continue to travel on the train of life. I thought that was very beautiful. It says the train of life definitely is a metaphor of the inevitable comings and goings in each of our lives. There was somebody sent me this lovely little saying which said, it's a picture of a father and a little girl, or maybe it's a bigger brother, I'm not sure, but they asks the little girl, are there Muslims, Jews, Christians at your school? And the little girl answers, no, there are only children at my school. And I thought, how beautiful. I mean, only children. Isn't that gorgeous? So the other, somebody sent me John Denver's song, Some Days Are Diamonds and Some Days Are Stone. And it really fitted in with today's program. And I thought to myself, that's absolutely true, that some days are diamonds and some days are stone. And while I was in the game reserve and sitting on my own, looking at the different buck and species of animal that came up to the water hole, I was quite shocked. I'd always thought that zebras were peaceful animals. I mean, I remember as a little child having a little stuffed toy, a zebra stuffed toy, and thinking, wow, this was just the most beautiful animal. Well, what I saw quite startled me and also got me thinking about sometimes how we are kicked in life. There were salt licks that were put out for the animals next to the waterhole. And these zebra were chewing away on the grass, and there were babies with them, and they all seemed pretty fine, getting on with each other, when suddenly the one decided she didn't, it was a female herd, by the way, and females can be very vicious. Anyway, the one zebra tried to push the other one away, first of all, with her head, which was a big head and bigger than the others. And the other was not prepared to move. So what happens? The one who tried to push with her head decided to try another scheme. And she turned round and kicked with both feet. I didn't know that they could lift themselves like that. And what's more, she looked very pregnant, and she was kicking a fellow pregnant zebra. But she kicked really hard. So what happened? The one zebra that got the first kick turned round and kicked back. So the two of them had their backsides to each other, kicking each other, and then both ambled off into the bush, quite seemingly happy with what they had achieved, which I'm not sure was anything, because all it was a fight that got neither of them anywhere. And it was quite amusing to watch. Going back to friendships, I do believe that our friends at the moment, we are needing this kindness, collective support of one another. We need friends who help us value our lives, value life as it is now, sometimes to see the other side. And as we face unbelievable anti-Semitism in the world today, it can be very frightening and scary. But if you actually think about what has gone into generations and generations of the heritage of the Jewish nation, there are many times when everything seemed bad. But what happened? We stood up. I was not Jewish even then, quite honestly, but I'm very proud to say I am now. And this is something that I have always admired, the strength to actually step up and face the world again. Thank you, Craig.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with you. If you'd like to contact me, please do so on, let me just think what it is again. I've got an absolute blank, so I won't give it to you right now, but you can on the High FM website. Please just listen to an audio clip by Brené Brown and David Kessler on collective grief and vulnerability. And it was during the COVID epidemic, but it's very relevant to today. Thank you, Craig.
Okay, so when I talk to people right now since the pandemic, since COVID-19, and I say, how are you doing? And they describe how they're doing, I hear grief.
Yes.
But when I come back and say, God, yeah, there's a lot of grief. No, I'm not in grief. There's no grief here.
Right.
Tell me about what you see us experiencing right now.
We are all dealing with the collective loss of the world we knew.
Oh,
the
God.
world we knew is now gone forever. We talk about 9/11. Do you remember what the airports were like before 9/11?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about, do you remember what the world was like before the pandemic? I don't know how this is going to change, but it will. We're going to find meaning. We're going to come out the other side of this. And we're going to say things like, do you remember in the old days when we used to shake hands? How crazy was that? Or whatever it is. But this world that we've all been accustomed to is now gone. And we're collectively, just like you said, so many people are feeling heaviness. So many people are talking about, I woke up and cried. I went to bed and cried. And just like you, I'm like, it's grief. And yet, there's a part of us that goes, grief, no one died yet. And we don't understand. When people say to me, what is grief? I'll say it's the death of something. It's the death of a loved one. It's the death of a marriage. It's called a divorce. It's the death of a relationship. It's called a breakup. A job loss is the loss of that work world you had. This is a collective loss of the world we all lived in before the pandemic. And we, like every other loss, didn't know what we had until it was gone. And so here we are, and just like you, we're all trying to find ways to virtually hold each other's hands. We're in this together. It is not going to be forever. it will end. There's not a dark night that stays. And yet, we have to feel these feelings. We've got to feel the grief.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I found my WhatsApp number 061 895 1019. Watch that YouTube you've just heard. Is about collective grieving. And this is often a grief that can't be spoken. This collective grieving is when we are accustomed to the world being a certain way, but that has gone. And we are left with this emptiness. This is the grief. It's that's with us, what we're going through since the 7th of October, the massacre by Hamas terrorists. Since then, we in the world, in the diaspora and in Israel, are dealing with the grief, the death of the sense of safety and security. And we're having to find a different security, a different way of looking at the world, of not becoming bitter and twisted like many of our enemies are, but rather of looking at it with maybe gentle eyes, looking at ourselves and realizing that we are each being asked to hold one another up, virtually, to hold one another up. And if you think of a fire, a bushfire, I'm not going to even mention that Los Angeles fire, and all the beautiful homes everywhere, and others all burnt down to ashes. I must admit, Gaza's looking the same. What happens after a bushfire? Very slowly, after the first rains, you see little sprouts of grass coming up again. And you know that certain bushes need to be burnt down in order to bloom again. And I found that very interesting. And I think we're going to all bloom again, but in different ways, as long as we look at our choices and behave accordingly. Because if we're going to be pulled down into this unbelievable void of hatred, of anger, of despair, if we're going to be pulled down there, we're going to be pulling everyone else with us, everyone who is on as a passenger sitting next to us, all far away, whoever, but on this train ride of our lives. And we cannot do that. Viktor Frankl talks about the various ways to find meaning in our lives. And the attitudinal one is one of the biggest things that he talks about. What is our attitude in circumstances that we can't change? And what is left? How we choose to respond to those circumstances. You know that what was being said there also by David Kessler on collective grief and vulnerability was that this dark, dark night does not stay forever. We have to hold on to that thought that will change. Deepak Chopra writes an amazing article. You can all pick it up on Google or Safari, and it says, it's called Overriding the Voice of Fear. And he says the more unsettled the times, the more potent are our anxious feelings. When a natural disaster gets completely out of hand, like the current wildfires in Los Angeles, he says fear triggers more than an immediate reaction. I'm just taking a sip of water. And he said that a backlog of anxiety is then invoked, much of it stemming from what we have gone through before. It's powerful enough to override every sense that we think will be okay, all those feelings go, and what comes in its place? Fear and anxiety, and we are forced to adapt to the presence of this fear. But how do people usually adapt to anxiety? Besides taking tranquilizers, he goes on to say, psychologically, the two most common ways are denial and distraction. Distraction, I can understand. I see many people posting on Facebook different things, places they've been to, fun they've had, but they are pushing aside. They're going into denial and pushing it away. They're distracting with other things. But by ignoring our anxiety and doing something that takes our mind for it, it's only temporary. It's not going to be there forever. And so he goes on to say, Deepak Chopra goes on to say, can you get this unwelcome guest to leave? And he says the secret is to make conscious choices that cause fear to shrink away because you no longer need it. One of the hostages who had been caught, one of the male hostages who were taken hostage into Hamas, kept in isolation for all this time, kept himself alive by working maths problems out in his brain, by walking up and down on this tiny little almost caves that he was kept in, walking up and down there every day to keep himself stronger, to keep his thoughts focused on something else. And I just think that though we need to look at our hostages that are being freed at the moment and realize that, my gosh, they are really teaching us something. With every single thing that they do, they are our teachers in this time of darkness and turmoil. Thank you, Craig.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with you. And I just wanted to mention, because I know I'm going to be told to wrap up shortly, that in this article by Deepak Chopra, he does say that fear is a form of stress, and you can choose to release stress anytime you want. And he gives an exercise. It's a breathing and a movement exercise. Says go outside, lie on your grass or lie on the floor. And he gives you an exercise of how to release the fear and anxiety in you. And we need to go gently through this world. There is evil, as I said, and we need to stay away from people whose energies pull us down into their own anger, despair, and darkness. We cannot allow ourselves to be pulled down like that. We have to believe that we can overcome this fear that is around us. I saw this little quote: life isn't qualified by the branded clothes you wear or the fluency of English you speak. It's measured by the number of faces who smile when they hear your name. I love that. I really did. And I saw that a message came through, but I'm afraid I can't pick it up at the moment. Did it come through to you, Craig, or was it on mine? We started with these days. There will be days like these. And I just want to say that this goes on to say, walk on a path guided by your heart and steered by your soul. Walk each step with purpose and the next with conviction. Show us who you are and who you will want to be. Embrace your path. It exists as an autobiography continually written upon. Your past is not who you are, but rather context for who you will be. Your flaws do not make up for your being, but serve as reminders that you are human, broken in a way that is beautiful, leaving no room for normalcy. You are special, and your circumstances do not define you, but they will facilitate the storytelling about what you came from. Sometimes, I must admit, it goes on to say the world is yours. It isn't outside of you. It lies blanketed in your perspectives. You cannot live another man's life. In the same way, you will not last living within the confines of another man's reality. Your life must be defined by those who have not lived, cannot be defined by those who have not lived it. So live. And in the event that you forget how, go outside and you will see what's beautiful out there. Watch the flowers, watch the changing seasons. I've added that. And I just feel that right now we need to look at one another with softened eyes, keep away from people who are going to pull you down. And there's an African proverb that I'd like to end with. It says, you can't stop trouble from coming, but you don't have to give it a chair to sit on. So keep your chair to yourself and let others find a chair for themselves. Got a beautiful song that's going to be on after I've ended. You can pick it up yourself. It's not going to be on the podcast. You can pick up all my podcasts on under High FM, Finding Human, or you can find it on YouTube as well under Sue Jackson, High FM. Calibro is now going to be singing us out with Empty Chairs and Empty Tables. Thank you so much, Craig, for keeping me on air.